Hello my friends, welcome to today's review of this brand new release from Baltany. It's the S4084, 36mm date just homage, a fitting tribute if you will. I would say it's a tasteful tribute because it is not just a cut and paste of a current issue Rolex. It's not trying to be a clone or a copycat watch. It is very much doing a lot of copying, but it's paying homage to watches from 20 or 30 years ago. This looks very much like the watches I used to really hanker for in the window of the jewellers when I was about 12 years old. This looks like a 90s watch to me, and there are some subtle differences to bring this up to today's style and today's standards if you will, and that's why I think this is a lovely watch for those of us who are not snobs and don't mind a tribute watch or an homage. Is this one any good? It's a bit more expensive than the usual Baltany affair, but have they upped their game? This is what we're going to be finding out now. Let's have a closer look, shall we? What are the stats and specs, Dan? Tell them what they are. Stats and specs. Sized up to me, I took 6 of these links out on this Jubilee style bracelet. It weighed 117 grams, sized up for my 7¼ inch wrist. This is what it looks like on my manly wrist. Anyway, case size, 36mm. Length of the watch, 42. Lug width, 20. Height, including crystal, 11.4. Bracelet tapers from 20 at the lugs, which are female end links. Tapers down to 15.7, jumps back up to 19 at the clasp. Clasp is milled, beautiful solid thing with 4 micro adjusts. Bracelet is sized with screw pins. Movement inside is an NH35. Sitting on front is a sapphire with clear AR on the underside. The loom is C3 old style, that's what they call it. And the variations you can get for this watch are two-tone gold, which is what we've got here, all silver colour variation, and there's a two-tone with gold and the dial is burgundy. Lovely sort of fumé effect. The crown is screwed down, 100 meters water resistance. The price for this lovely lot, including really nice packaging, warranty, etc., is $220 and are pretty much exactly the same in Great British pounds. What are your nitpicks, Dan? Tell them. Get straight onto it. First thing I did when I had to get this watch to fit me was of course I've got to size it up to my wrist. And the way you do that is by undoing these little screws. And I've got a collection of screwdrivers and I had to use pretty much the smallest one I've got to undo these screws. And the weird thing as well was I had to take out every single link on this side, 5 of them, and then I took 1 more out this side, so when it was on the wrist the clasp was pretty much as central as possible on my wrist and the watch would sit comfortably in this position. If I took an even amount of links both sides, this clasp would have been in a really weird odd position on the underside of my wrist. And while we're here, the second complaint is this very chunky clasp. I wish they did a really nice modern version, if you will, of a pressed clasp, beautifully built for example, but this, a very nicely made milled clasp, but looks very chunky, thick metal, and the way it closes together is it still leaves this weird sort of gap here and here. It doesn't sit down completely tightly, even though it's tight in fitment, there's not any wobble, so it's just a little bit of a weird odd one. Quality amazing, but the execution about an 8 out of 10. This is purely just the nature of this colorway, but it's a little bit hard to read because you've got gold indices, dial and hands, etc. Bit tricky. This is purely an opinion, but I'm not a massive fan of Cyclops. I think the date window on this model is actually big enough, so those of us who may be going a bit blind, it's helpful to have a Cyclops, but it's an iconic classic element that should be on this style of watch. But I just think for some it's a little bit of a fly in the ointment. I would say if they're going to go down this vintage date just route, which they have obviously, I think they should have gone back even further in time. I like the fact that the date just from Rolex came out in 1945. It was a celebratory piece as an everyday wear thing and celebrating 40 years of Rolex. And since 1945, there's been a date just in our world of horology. So in the 50s, it looked a lot more like this. Really, since then, this 36mm iteration has looked very similar. There's been lots of different variations, of course. Anyone who's a Rolex nerd will know all these differences. I just know from looking at this, it's very similar aesthetically to the watches I remember looking in the window at in the 90s. So because it's a bit 90s, some might say it looks a little bit maybe possibly dated, but not dated enough. Last couple of things is the finishing on the gold element of the bracelet is very good, the quality, but the consistency isn't always amazing. Between the links here, as you may be able to see here, I'll try and do a macro, it doesn't go all the way around. Obviously underneath the bracelet it's not gold and it's all brushed, whereas on top we've got brushed and the middle part is the polished gold. When you're wearing the watch, you don't really notice it, but if you're doing a lot of scrutiny like I do as a watch reviewer, you do notice that the finishing of the gold doesn't wrap around consistently on every single link. And lastly, the price. £220 is relatively steep for an NH35 movement watch, but I would say with the way prices of things are at the moment in the world, how things do fluctuate, it's acceptable, but the quality and the specification is outstanding. Oh, now you got that out of the way. What do you like, Dan? What do you like? Well, the first thing is this size. 36mm sounds like a small lady's girly watch, but it's not. It's a classic sized men's watch. Look at that on my 7¼ inch wrist. It doesn't look too small. It works so well. It's comfortable. The weight of only 117 with a full steel watch is very light. It just hits that lovely sweet spot. Next thing I really like is this engraved rehort. I only saw this when I was really taking some close-up shots. In here it says Baltany all the way around here. That's not something that was on the vintage ones, and it's something you're more likely to see on the more modern ones. So it's a bit of a modern spin. I love this fluted bezel, the way it plays with the light. As you can see, even under this light, it's just sparkly and it's just mesmerizing to look at. I just love that feature. Next thing is the build, the fit, the finish, the case and the bracelet. I'll start with the case. Polishing, really deep, rich, smooth, no ripples, and it's so smoothly done. And then underneath, which is the best bit for making brushed because it's against your skin, it doesn't look all disgusting and scratched very quickly. I like that it's brushed underneath. The finishing on the fluted bezel, the rehorts on the inside, the sunburst dial, all the little indices. When you look up close at the hands under macro, the finishing of those is really smoothly done. The edges of the hands are neat. The polishing is done well. There's no patchy bits. Really very well thought through and intricately done watch for not much more than £200. And I love the B on the dial there at the 12 o'clock. It's a nice little tribute to their own classy logo. Baltany is a nice name. I do like that. And having the B on there and matching at the crown, which is dead straight with the logo there. If they're all the same as that, that's very impressive. Same with the fit and finish. This bracelet, the screws, a lot of them had to be taken out for me to size this up. They came in and out so smoothly. I think I'd need to put some Loctite on them because they might work loose because they were really easy to take in and out. So a little dab of Loctite will hold them in. But the fit and finish of this clasp is stunning as well. I've got to show you this bit. Look at this. Under here, this polished element is just so neatly done and so beautifully finished. And that's the bit that sits against your skin. So you don't get any nasty rubbing or snagging as you're wearing the watch. So that's what aids to the comfort. And when I talk about build quality, the other thing which is always something worth noting is what you're paying the extra for. It's easily missed and people don't always talk about it. How edgy is a watch? By edgy, it's not as in is it a cool dude in a rock band. It is all the little elements of the edges of the bracelet, this corner here of the lugs. There's no sharp edges. And I love the looks. I just love the proportions. It's got that golden ratio of how everything works together in harmony. And the color combination, I chose this because I love the gold two-tone. It looks like a classy gentleman's watch. Some might say I look a little bit gangster, but you know what, I don't care. Obviously, to the untrained eye, people think you're just wearing a Rolex knockoff, but I don't think, as someone who's a watch nerd, it's got enough little subtle differences for it to be its own unique thing. I love that it's got that reliable Seiko movement in there, which is not going to let you down, and the specifications all good for the rest of it. So to finish this video, would I recommend it? Wholeheartedly, yes. For just over £200, there's not many watches which are going to beat this. For the looks, there's not many 36mm date just homages out there, and this just has all the boxes ticked. I've said the criticisms, there was enough of them, but overall this is an absolute cracker.